Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Gray. I'm a senior marketing manager here at Disseminate, and my co-host is Elliot Elsley, who is Disseminate's Director of Sales and Revenue Ops. Now, today's episode is a really good one because we're joined by Benjamin Gredeson, a global employer brand and culture strategist who's led employee advocacy programs across multiple industries. Benji's got a real depth of experience, and it shows. You'll hear that pretty quickly, that he's not just about the theory. He's been in the trenches working with leaders, employees and ambassadors, trying to bring employee advocacy to life at a number of organizations, and successfully so. So a few things you'll take away from our chat. Firstly, we spoke about senior leadership buy-in. So why helping leaders get past that fear of being bad at social media can be key to unlocking momentum across businesses. Secondly, Benji shares why authentic, imperfect content beats polished corporate messaging every time, which she just had a really interesting take on. I think that's something that we all need to hear in the era of AI-generated content. And then lastly, something else I was really interested by was our discussion into incentives and culture building, from merch to exclusive events, and why it's less about rewards and more about creating that sense of belonging and pride among employees when you're trying to get an advocacy program off the ground. Now, before we jump in, a quick mention of something I know you'll find really valuable. We've just released the world's biggest employee advocacy study. Literally, we analysed over 500,000 LinkedIn posts from employee advocates. We're so excited it's out, and the reception so far has been phenomenal. It's packed with data on how organisations are running their programs, what's working, and where the challenges might lie. So if you're looking to benchmark your own effort or just get some inspiration, we'll drop a link to that in the show notes, so make sure you grab your copy. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Right, so firstly, Benjamin, welcome to the podcast. Would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role?
Sure. So my name is Benjamin Gredeson, Swedish, Finnish, based in Berlin since a few years. I've been the global employer branding strategist and culture strategist at a large e-commerce for the last few years. I have my own company. We were doing branding and rebranding and focusing at the moment on employer branding strategies as well. And then I'm an artist on the side and driving a collective here in Berlin as well.
Super interesting. Yeah, that'll fill the time, I'm sure. So, Benji, you mentioned in our initial conversation that you've managed employee advocacy programs at a number of organizations now, which is fantastic because obviously we can draw on a wealth of experience here across a number of different industries. But something that you mentioned most recently at Autodoc, but I know you said you've done this in other organizations as well, is getting senior leadership involved in the role that they play in kind of driving adoption. And I think in the Autodoc example, you mentioned working with the CEO there, but generally speaking, when it comes to working with senior leadership, how do those partnerships tend to evolve?
So getting people to make content on social, especially if they had not so much experience in it, is kind of difficult. You have to do like a one-to-one person coaching or education somehow. And something that took me a while to get past is that senior leaders, they're just normal people. And I realized that whenever I kind of pin that down, I just realized that everyone just needs to have a hand to be held forward somehow. So I think what has worked very well with me working in different organizations with senior leaders is just to have kind of one-to-one conversations where they feel like they're getting something out of the conversations, where they feel like they can be shown how social media can be used, and where also we kind of pick some low-hanging fruits where they feel like their professional life is also gaining from their social content creation, but not just creation, but also engagement part. Because I feel like many senior leaders or many people generally haven't really still understood the importance of socials, And in a previous role, I was doing recruiter marketing campaigns where we were targeting passive candidates. And just that was like a Pandora's box of opportunities where we could just tap into an untapped market. So finding some kind of low-hanging fruits, educating the leaders and kind of following through with some kind of strategy and X amount of posts per week, and then seeing how engagement is growing, I feel really has helped. It's like a top-down, bottoms-up approach works well. So work with ambassadors on the floor and then with senior leaders, and then see how they can kind of connect to the employees. If it's a large organization, I think it also kind of works well hand in hand somehow.
Yeah, I think that engagement piece is so interesting for the senior leadership more than anybody else, I find, because I think there's always a hesitancy with senior leaders where they go, well, I haven't done this before. What if I post and I only get 2 likes? I'm the CEO. I need to be seen as important and I want to be a thought leader. And, you know, I do keynotes to thousands of people. It would be a travesty if I only got 2 likes on LinkedIn. So I think to your point of connecting sort of bottom up, top down at the same time is a really nice thing to be able to do. I try and avoid talking about our platform on this podcast, and Liz tells me off after it. But we have a feature in our platform that does exactly that, where you can take those senior leaders and you can go, hey, can everybody just go and engage with this piece of content and just kind of encourage that behavior a little bit? And it works so well from that perspective because it's such an easy trade with the senior leadership. Hey, look, if we get you doing this, we can encourage employees to engage more, which is going to help your visibility just generally, but it really means that they know they're going to get a few more likes on LinkedIn. They're going to get a bit more engagement off the bat. They don't feel quite so concerned about that kind of low starting point for them with their engagement.
No, for sure. And I think it's like, especially senior leaders, they are used to maybe getting their way through things and to be good at their job. And what they kind of have to do, if you haven't done this before, is to not be good at something and accepting that. I think that's like a big human thing of like learning new things is scary somehow. So to kind of getting them or supporting them over that threshold of you have something to say, and it's a starting point of you becoming that actual thought leader on socials, but you have to start somewhere somehow. And that's like a bit of a threshold that I feel like we're building up because we have these bubbles of socials that we're following, and they're all doing amazing stuff, and we see only the ones who are doing the most amazing things, and getting to that point takes a lot of work. And I think that kind of discrepancy of where you are, where you want to be, you have to kind of diminish that as much as possible for getting them on board. So here, I think what helps in that way is to create a social media strategy of like, okay, it's not about the one post if it's successful or not. If it's like, it's about the algorithm training it towards like in your favor to be able to get what you want out of it. And for that, you need consistency and engagement that's going to come with each other somehow.
I love that. I was going to ask you, Benji, what the biggest challenge had been in getting senior leaders on board with posting more on social media. Would you say that it has been helping them overcome that fear of being bad at something, or has there been other stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think also because sometimes I work in organizations and we want our senior leaders to be part of some kind of campaign or something. But then even if everyone, the direct reports and everyone is on board with that, they themselves might not be on board with that. So kind of seeing where you can get them on your side is a very personal thing. It can be a lot of things of not feeling good enough or starting something new or not directly getting the engagement you need for it. So whenever that has happened, I also have taken over some accounts in the beginning to be like, okay, if I cosplay you for a while and let's do your content, then I can kind of guide you really much so hands-on in also what I would like to get out of it. That kind of helps to get over some kind of threshold as well. So it's really kind of an individual approach, I feel, that we have to get them to, if we really want them to be engaged, we have to find a way that functions the long term also. It's not just a few weeks over the campaign, but I want them to change how they see social.
I think that helps so much with getting them engaged as well, right? If you're like, let me sort of act as you for a little while and I'll post on your behalf, you're more likely to get feedback to say, oh, I would have said it slightly differently actually, rather than getting stuck before you even post and they're kind of debating all of it. You're like, post it, and then they'll go, oh, actually, next time, could you maybe change it like this? And you get to sort of eventually go, next time, why don't you do it? And that would be way easier for everybody involved. And it's a nice way to like lean people down that road.
For sure. You have a good point there, Elliot, because let's say if I in the beginning start, okay, what's your, let's say, online persona, or how do you want to communicate on, let's say, LinkedIn, for example? And not so much comes out of that. It's like, oh yeah, I would like to be in these kind of generic things. But if I take over the channel and if I start to work on ideas and it's really kind of hands-on, you can see it directly happening. Then all of a sudden there's like a personality blossoming into, no, I would like to have it this way and that way. And with that type of kind of testing back and forth, you can really create that online persona for the senior leader. And then you can kind of, then it's the easier kind of to back off when you can see that, oh, it's actually being run by the person itself. And that's where we'd like to go for it.
Do you know, that really reminds me of people, this is a bit of a tenuous link here, so bear with me, but when people are prompting ChatGPT to do something for them, and while they're writing, they basically figure out how to do the task themselves because they've put in such a detailed brief. So I want to do this, I want to say that, whatever it might be. And in the process of writing the prompt, they're like, oh, do you know what? I can actually just do this because I've just explained how to do it. But it kind of feels like that with the senior leaders when, you know, if you start posting on their behalf and they're like, oh, actually, I might have done it this way. And it's like, okay, so you know exactly what you want to say, really, when you stop to think about it. It's just encouraging them to stop and think about it and not put pen to paper, but hands to keyboards, I guess, is the digital way of explaining that. Benji, something that you mentioned on our initial call was about this peer-to-peer influence being key to driving further adoption. So you mentioned about the fact that I think this was an example of Autodoc where you had a new leader, I think they might have been from Amazon, come through the door and they helped to drive momentum. Can you just share a little bit more about that? Because I thought it was fascinating.
Definitely. It's super interesting, I think, when new energy comes into any type of team. And specifically if they have an energy from somewhere else, so they've worked in a certain way from somewhere else. And as soon as you get let's say, someone amazing at social media or someone that has a huge network and they just continue what they did in their previous organization in the new one, you can really see the waves on the water of how that truly affects the people on the same kind of in the same level, in the same team as them. So getting senior leaders and educating them in social media or LinkedIn or engagement in any kind of way that we use advocacy has really kind of effects to their peers because we're social creatures, I guess, and we learn from each other, and not everyone are being taught by someone telling them what to do, but seeing what someone is doing, it can be stronger as well. So sometimes when I do an advocacy strategy in some organization, it's about finding the ambassadors, the true fans for the organization, the ones who really, maybe that they don't have to have so much experience in it, but they have to have passion for it. And if you can see that, and if you can educate this person in a team that might be very kind of important for you to kind of turn over or whatever you want to do with the team, and then you take over their channel or you educate them in how to use socials, you can really see how that really has and waves on the water of just doing one splash, and that kind of exponentially can grow into one new department, and then the direct reports of that department, and then you can see kind of pride in someone learning something from themselves. Maybe they wanted to do it, they get inspired from their peer in their whatever department they're in, and then they're kind of copying with pride, and then that can lead into me doing, let's say, global content that I can kind of give them a few options to pick so that they feel like the content that coming from the global, let's say, page, that they can kind of make it into their own, so that they can do something but with some hand-holding from my side. That's been really interesting to see when new leaders are coming from organizations where maybe they have been more advanced on how to use social, how to use advocacy, and how that just has a lot of impact on the team itself.
I've seen that, so less probably I've, from my perspective, seen that from others coming from outside organizations, but I see the sentiment use case with sales teams quite often. As soon as you get a sales leader or somebody in a sales team that suddenly starts outperforming people, and particularly if they're just suddenly really active on social media, that's always been like a really big catalyst for everybody else in a sales team to start very quietly following suit, because they'll go, this person's posting on LinkedIn all the time and getting loads of likes, and my leads and my prospects are engaging with their content. I need to start doing this now. And it has this really, really nice cascading effect in sales teams. And if you can layer in what I find really helpful is little ad hoc sentiments. It doesn't need to be data. It doesn't need to be like, because a lot of people don't, unless you sit in the marketing space, you don't really care about, average click-through rates and things like that. They're just not metrics anyone else is interested in the same way. But when you can just go, oh, Lewis closed a deal for $50,000 because he posted something on LinkedIn and somebody engaged with it and it started a conversation, those are the little sentiment sort of stories that people go, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to be able to do. I'm going to post on LinkedIn because of that fact now. I think it makes such a big difference.
For sure. And that also makes me think of, let's say, what KPIs are we bringing to the picture to see, let's say, measure success? One thing that we were doing when we work now very much so with LinkedIn, we grew organically from 4,000 to 76,000 in 3 years. And one thing that we noticed is that I think about 59 to 60% of everyone getting a new job at Autodoc specifically were engaging with our content in some way. If that was live pages on LinkedIn or the organic content that we posted, so that they were really already kind of aware of who we are, or they kind of understood how we're doing things. And that could be like a very effective then KPI for measuring success for how we're using LinkedIn, for example, or the content you're writing for LinkedIn. So it's a good point of not everyone is so data driven of the numbers or whatever. It's also kind of hard to follow if it's like a sheet of like 50 KPIs, so it's about finding what triggers that person, what they need in their professional life and kind of their personal life connected to it.
I love that. It's something that I actually wanted to come on to, Benji, because like we said at the beginning, you've managed advocacy programs in such a range of industries and multiple organizations now. And so in the process of doing so, as you mentioned, you've worked with such a variety of advocates. And of course, understanding how advocacy will benefit them all personally will work to drive adoption. But I'm curious to know, because something that I think maybe early advocacy programs are guilty of doing is just uploading or just adding lots of marketing, promotional focused content to their advocacy platform if you're using tech, and then expecting everybody to go and share it. And of course, not everybody wants to share overly promotional content. We always say that variety is key. But how do you tailor content and then also coaching for, I'm going to use a phrase I don't necessarily like, which is non-traditional participants. So traditional meaning marketers, HR and salespeople, but how do you tailor content and coaching for everybody else?
So I had this idea a few years ago. Okay, if I just make content globally and I just push it through the local channels, we had a lot of local channels. It was based in, I think maybe 10, 12 different countries with their own social channels that we also started. It was focusing foremost on Facebook and LinkedIn at that time. And then my idea was, okay, I make global content, I just push it out to them and then they can just do it themselves somehow. Failure, like huge failure. Like this didn't work at all. So then I said, okay, what type of content do people want to create? So then I started, instead of making some kind of like global content that is quite generic, that they can use as starting point of their own stuff, but then also really having, let's say, content creation sessions with the different teams. So let's say having a pack of 5 people and then really talking content, like what does your content strategy for the coming week looking like? How can I be there supporting you, and how can I guide you through what you want to do and what do you want to post about? So really kind of hands-on content creation in a process has really worked well.
Your point around localization, I think, is one of the most important ones. And I don't think that is even, some people hear localization and segmentation and they think language. That's regionally based, which is important depending on some businesses.
This is also very interesting. We were doing a campaign for Czech Republic, and we wanted to have more people to one of our highly automated warehouses at Autodoc. And we're like, hey, what type of campaign will be successful here? We're thinking billboards, we're thinking some kind of interactive campaign on social channels, meta campaign, we're thinking TikTok, we're thinking all of that. But what was the most successful in that campaign was the radio ad. And like that would not work in so many other countries or so many other regions. But there, everyone is in their car listening to the radio and pushing that on the radio. That was highly successful. So kind of seeing, let's say, what channels you're thinking about also, let's say, have a structure come from global, but hyper personalize or do that for the region that you're doing it for, in not just in the language that you're using, but thinking culture and thinking channels is super important to really get to people, to really get to the people that you would like. And that's a very interesting kind of learning for me as well, to not think too big, to really think small and niche as well in here.
And I think that works really well as well. From that talent and the attraction standpoint, that also works within your employee set as well. From our perspective, when we talk about talent, when we talk about this with clients that we're working with, if you want to hire great developers, don't ask your sales team to share the developer job vacancies. Ask your developers to share those job vacancies. It sounds obvious, and it is obvious in the grand scheme of things, but people forget about this and they go, oh, we just got a job application and can everybody share it? Well, no, you don't want everyone to share it. Get your developers to share it, because they're going to be connected to developers, and that's their friends, and that's where they have influence in that network.
For sure. I agree with that. It also makes me think of, let's say, employer branding from my perspective. It's not like a one person show. It's everyone's show. It's everyone's task, or everyone's everyone's thing to do for the employee to be that employer would like. So, but it's hard to get people engaged or understand the importance that it can have if you actually take ownership of that yourself. That's however you talk about it, or however you're doing it, or whatever you're sharing does have an impact for the business.
It's fantastic stuff, Benji. I want to come back to something that we were talking about previously, or actually something that we just came up earlier in this point, which was relevance, because I think something that really stood out to me from speaking with you was that you prefer to see real, more authentic content as opposed to like this polished content that maybe looks like it came straight from a marketing department and kind of has that feel of, oh, I was told to share this, as opposed to, this is something I just wanted to share with my network. You mentioned that you want this real content over polished content. Why is that so important for you and for advocacy as well?
I think on one side, people connect more with something that they could create themselves, like something overly polished, something overly perfect. It's like there's like a distance from you and the friends that you're seeing on social media, for example, the people doing very kind of down to earth content. And that's on one side. So kind of like your connection to it, or how you see you're part of it, is one thing. On the other one, I think it's like, how can you scale content creation in a way that people don't feel like it's like a threshold that they have to buy like a marketing team to make that content, So kind of lowering the bar of what type of quality of content that you have, I think can also inspire more people to jump on the bandwagon of content creation. And that's where we want to go to. Preferably, I don't want to do any content myself, but just curate content that comes from the people who live in the organization, who work in the organization, who are there doing it. They can tell those stories much better than I can. I can maybe help them, like push them in the right direction, but that story is best told by the person working in a location, in a factory, or really doing that work that maybe we would like to have someone new in the team for. So yeah, it's about like the content creation, scalability, and to kind of really tell the real stories. So it's a bit like more authentic as well, I think.
I really like it made me laugh thinking about the authenticity piece and like content you could create at home. Where do you stand, I guess, as a question to this? And I always see this statement as the utopian view, right? I'd love for employees to be creating content that's super authentic, really speaks to their audience, that they've spent the time. When people aren't doing that, would you rather see a smaller amount of authentic content going out and much smaller amount, or would you rather see a larger group of employees starting the process, trying, maybe they're not very maybe they are too polished and they're posting corporate content, and try and refine a wider group's worth of content?
Good question. Really interesting, I think. I agree with the idea of the utopian, that we would like everyone to be part of the journey that we're on. This is not going to happen. Not everyone is excited for this. Not everyone cares about this. Actually, a very small part cares about this. In my own experience, whenever I see someone just resharing content from Global or from the channels, and they have no personalized content, I tend to lose trust in them. I tend to just it's just a reshare. It doesn't come. I don't see their personality. So I rather have a small group of hyper personalized real content coming than a big group that just kind of reverbs what they're hearing. I think also because if you see something too many times, it's also it's like getting lost. Like I don't see the real part of it somehow. So yeah, it gets watered out very easily, I think. And then I think if you start with a small team, I think that has an effect. to their peers. And I think that's where you would like to go to create real content, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the authenticity piece is just like, even if it's just a smidgen, something that we notice on our side from a data perspective, it's actually in a report that I'm sure Lewis is probably going to talk about at some point. Just a minor tweaking to an employee advocacy caption, I think it was on average, it's about 3 to 4 times more engagement from somebody just tweaking it by about 1%. So really, even just one word will massively ramp up the engagement, essentially, because it's just a smidgen of your personality's gone into that in some way, shape, or form.
Interesting.
The challenge to that is obviously when you take a very large organization that's got 70,000 employees, you can't do one-to-one training with 70,000 people. It's impossible. So you have to have a way to go, can we just encourage this behavior? Can we get people to take one more step on the kind of stepping stone journey of just tweaking it a little bit themselves? And that's part of the game. And that's the kind of where advocacy isn't something that you can just switch on and know that it's working. You've got to kind of build and build over time.
For sure. It's not like a campaign, but it's a process, or it's a way of thinking somehow that you have to work with people. So it's like a change management thing also. If they have never done this before, how can I support them? And I can't just tell them to do it. They have to either see to do it. You have to feel like they're part of the direction forward, and have to do also with, let's say, how rigid is the brand itself? What can we do in that? And how can we also develop the brand or the employer brand in a way that it's human centric. It's made for the people working there. Many organizations I work for have a very rigid brand book, but not so clear employer brand book, or who are we as a place to work, not what we're selling. And that's kind of like something that I've seen in many organizations, that it's not so rigid, or it's not even there somehow. So there's no guidelines, there's no book, there's nothing for people to go to as a starting point of learning how to do that themselves, because they just think of the whatever we're doing, B2C, B2B kind of stuff. And that's not really the employer brand itself in a way.
Yeah, I've seen this with so many clients as well, where actually over time, some of our clients we've worked with for 8-9 years. It's so ingrained in the culture of the business at this point. People that were working with us 8-9 years ago were pretty forward-thinking businesses in the grand scheme of things. But now it's such an ingrained part of the company culture, like people on board, and it's just something that they're brought into. The companies that are adopting advocacy now, they've got a couple of years before this becomes normal in the business and not a new exercise and a new initiative. Once it becomes standard, whilst it kind of loses some of its shininess as a shiny new exercise and a thing that's driving it, it's so much more powerful, because then those kind of more authentic stories come out and people really start to kind of get better into it as they go.
Also, something that made me think of this when you're saying it is that let's say employee advocacy, it's not just a tool or just a campaign or just one small process, but as you say, like it becomes almost like a buzzword at the moment, or employee advocacy. Oh, we have to jump on that bandwagon, and then thinking that we can just do that simply by not thoroughly going through it or changing something towards it, and then not really directly seeing the impact of your work. It's like a big thing as well. I think it's interesting to see what foundation are you building for a future where employee advocacy is more prioritized, or where more people are engaging with it. I think that's a very interesting way of seeing it, and I agree with that.
I couldn't agree more. And Elliot, I appreciate you doing the plug of the report on my behalf. So I'll talk about a different piece of content that's relevant to this, actually. We produced a piece of content a while back called the 3 C's of employee advocacy, and Elliot actually supported on this one as well. But it was coordination, content. So, you need content to be able to manage an effective advocacy program so that people have things to talk about. But culture is the third one. Without culture, and building a culture of sharing, Elliot said it countless times on this podcast, you can't just buy advocacy. You can't buy a tool or set up a process and expect people to start sharing. Benji, obviously something that comes about in the early days of managing an employee advocacy program is you have to think about the launch process, and part of that launch process, whether you have a tool, whether you're running things manually with a spreadsheet, you want to start to build excitement and curiosity around this new initiative. So curious to know how you've done that at the organizations that you've worked with previously.
So we've been trying different things, like what makes people excited to be part of something bigger. So And this came out of not finding the right people to do what we wanted in the employee advocacy programs. So then we started thinking about, okay, what type of merch can we create for those ambassadors, the true fans, that all is given to people who are part of this group, or some yearly events that is only for the engaged, only for the ambassadors, some kind of exchange between different teams geographically. How can they start to share content or create certain content that they're kind of proud of to share from one to the other, showing that they're like a global team. So it's very interesting to see how incentives can be used in different ways, that is not just like a bonus or more free time on that part, but really kind of making people feel like they're part of the direction forward, part of like the in-group of learning something, that they're kind of boosting that they're proud to be ambassadors for this organization. So this can be done quite simply through merch, events, or even, let's say, spreadsheets or some kind of semi-official communication about them being part of the team. Look how good they did on a monthly basis, or look how much engagement our ambassador team created for €0. Something like this can really help boost the morale in the team, or the excitement to be part of the ambassador team.
I think something that's really important there as well is something I've noticed is that sort of reward gamification, however you want to kind of phrase it, like create some excitement around the thing. Something I've always been really keen on doing, but also always really conscious of, because some people go, oh, well, let's make it a monthly thing or make it a weekly thing. And I always recommend clients don't do that, because it removes the excitement around that piece. I think doing it once, doing it a couple of times a year is really what creates and drives all of that activity really, really quickly. When you do it monthly, people become a bit more, well, I'll just do it next month, or I'll do it the month after, or whenever it might be. But if you do it, hey, we're giving away something really, really cool, something you're going to be really excited about, but we're just doing it this one time. Everybody that's on the fence will suddenly go, well, I'll go and have a look, because this is my one and only chance to have a go at that. And it's such a good way to kind of activate people, just get people kind of started.
Yeah, because you also don't want people to do it only for the benefits of it, right? It should also be an authentic, a real feeling about you wanting to be part of this, also for the sake of being part of it. So it's like a fine line you have to kind of go on for not getting the wrong people on board for the wrong reasons, basically.
Yeah, completely agree.
Well, Benji, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always hate bringing good conversations to a close, but unfortunately, we must do it. But would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about what you've got going on at the moment, and if there's anything else you wanted to share? The floor is yours.
For sure. So I'm a person, I want to have always like 5 different projects going on. At the moment, I'm working with a queer collective here in Berlin, and we are looking at how we can support more queer artists in the club scene, in the nightlife here in Berlin. And we're doing exhibitions, we're doing some kind of dance parties. We have a residency and podcast with SoundCloud. So I'm super excited to jump into stabilize this organization a little bit more. I have some other ideas of some startups to start, and I'm excited to jump into this. There's going to be some changes for the future for me professionally, and I am very excited about it. So I kind of want to give myself the grace to see what's going to come for the future. And that's all I want to say about this, I think.
It's very exciting stuff. You told us a little bit about it before we started recording, and I'm excited to follow your journey on LinkedIn. And for anybody listening, absolutely go follow Benji on LinkedIn. If you want that splash of authentic content in your feed, that is the place to go. But Benji, thanks again. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care.